Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name is Jim. Thank you for riding along today. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. There you will find our Boomers General Store, a list of places you can access our podcast, our Twitter page, our LinkedIn page, our YouTube channel. Well, let's get into this. What I've got going on here is a list of my favorite TV characters from the time I could remember watching TV right up to about the year 2020. There's only a few rules on this. One is that I could only have one character per show, and the only place I deviated from that was one show back in the 70s, and I'll talk about that when I get there. Another thing is it was only on the major networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. So if I do put somebody down that was on Fox, for example, it was an error. I meant to just do the big three networks. That's what we all watched until probably the 21st century really came about. I mean, Fox was there probably in the 90s, but that's the way I have it. That's the way it's going to be. The only other thing is there are 73 of these. So I had to be a little bit particular because some shows had great characters that I did not write down. The reason I came up with 73 is I'm 73 years old. So there's one character for every year of my life. I guess if I did this next year, it would have been 74. But we're stuck with 73, and let's see how this goes. We'll start out in the 1950s. My first character is Lucy Ricardo from I Love Lucy. Lucille Ball played that character. Maybe the greatest female comic of all time, Lucille Ball. The way she made some of those faces and some of the things her and Ethel got into were just amazing. Remember when she was stomping those grapes? Apparently she actually did that. Great show. I Love Lucy. My next character was Clem Cadiddlehopper from the Red Skelton Show. Old Red himself was Clem. Red was crazy cool. I always loved the characters he played. My next one is from the Honeymooners, and it was Ed Norton, played by Art Carney. He played well off the other three characters in the show. Gunsmoke. Old Chester Be Good, or Chester, the guy that walked with a limp, played by Dennis Weaver. He was on in the early years of Gunsmoke. Amos McCoy, Grandpa McCoy from the Real McCoys, played by Walter Brennan. Eddie Haskell, played by Ken Osmond, Wally Cleaver's best buddy, and Beaver Cleaver's nemesis, to say the least. Hello, Mrs. Cleaver. You're looking mighty fine today. I was just telling Wallace. Maynard G. Krebs, the many loves of Dobie Gillis. Maynard was played by Bob Denver, who later became Gilligan. I don't think I had Bob Denver playing Gilligan. I think that's another rule I set for myself. The same actor couldn't play two different characters. We'll see if that proves out, though, as I go along. In the 1960s, The Andy Griffith Show, we had Barney Fife. Old Barney, played by Don Knotts. He may be the funniest TV character I ever saw, period. Ernie Thompson Douglas from My Three Sons. Barry Livingston played Ernie. He came later in the series, later on, after Mike, the oldest son, left. They had to have three of them, so along comes Ernie. I believe he was adopted into the family. Jethro Bodine from the Beverly Hillbillies. Old Jethro, played by Max Bauer Jr. Ensign Charles Parker on McHale's Navy, played by Tim Conway. Tim is another one of those comic geniuses. He proved that out in the Carol Burnett Show. Herman Munster. Old Fred Gwynn played Herman. He also was in Car 54, Where Are You, back in the 50s. But Herman was the main character in the Munsters. The Bill Dana Show, starring Bill Dana, his character was Jose Jimenez. Hello, I'm Jose Jimenez. I didn't do it very good, but it was funny every time he said it. He'd say it all the time. That was his main line. Gilligan's Island. Old Alan Hale Jr. played the skipper, Captain Jonas Grumby. I bet nobody even knew that was his name. We just knew him by the skipper. Jack Klugman played Oscar Madison in The Odd Couple. This brings us to the 1970s when this show started, and probably my longest list of characters is from the 70s here. Lou Grant, played by Ed Asner. The character that I liked Lou in was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I know he had the Lou Grant Show later. I don't think he was funny in that. He was very funny in Mary Tyler Moore. All in the Family, old Archie Bunker, played by Carol O'Connor. Sanford and Sons, Fred Sanford was played by Red Fox, grabs his heart and says, "I think it's the big one, Elizabeth." Remember that? Very funny man. Colonel Sherman T. Potter, played by Henry Morgan, in the excellent television show MASH. Kung Fu, David Carradine played Kwai Chang Caine. The Waltons, old Grandpa Walton, played by Will Geer. Grandpa's real name was Zebulon Walton. Happy Days, Ron Howard played Richie Cunningham. He was perfect in that. Now, there were a lot of characters like the Fonz and Potsy and Ralph Mouth, but Richie was the glue that held that show together. Old Half Pine on Little House on the Prairie, Laura Ingalls Wilder, played by Melissa Gilbert. Sherman Hemsley played George Jefferson on The Jeffersons. Archie Bunker's nemesis and best friend all at the same time. Those two were quite a pair. They should have made a show later on of those two in a nursing home or something. Welcome Back, Kotter. Julie Cotter was played by Marcia Strassman. Do you remember Squiggy? I know Homer Cates likes to call him Squiggly. Well, David Lander played Andrew Squiggy Slugman on Laverne and Shirley. One Day at a Time, the apartment super was played by Pat Harrington Jr. Super's name was Dwayne Snyder, old Snyder. 8 is Enough. Adam Rich played Nicholas Bradford, the little kid with a Dutch boy haircut. Remember him? Flo Kiss My Grits. Flo Jean Castleberry, played by Polly Holliday on Alice. Sergeant Philip K. Fish, Abe Vigoda on Barney Miller. On Three's Company, John Ritter played Jack Tripper. I always thought that he was a lucky guy living with those two girls. That's what I always thought. I was probably thinking wrong, though. The plane! Tattoo, played by Hervé Valenciennes. Excuse me if I didn't say his name correctly. Fantasy Island. Latka Gravis on Taxi. Remember Latka? Andy Kaufman played that. I speak about old Andy once in a while. He did the best Elvis impersonation I ever saw. WKRP in Cincinnati. You should know who I'm going to say without even thinking about it. Dr. Johnny Fever, played by Howard Hessman. Nanu Nanu. Mork and Mindy. Old Robin Williams played Mork from Ork. What you talk about, Willis? Arnold Jackson, played by Gary Coleman on the TV show Different Strokes. I loved that show. Those two brothers were fortunate enough to be taken in by that guy and assimilated into their family. And old Arnold, he always made me laugh. Probably the first villain I have on these, and maybe the only one, J.R. Ewing on Dallas. J.R. was played by Larry Hagman. Now we're in the 1980s. Thomas Magnum, Magnum P.I. Tom Selleck was the star of that. Here's the one that there's more than one character for the show. Larry, Daryl, and Daryl on the Newhart Show. This is the one where Newhart and his wife owned an inn in Vermont. These three great characters were played by William Sanderson, Tony Pappenfuss, and John Volstead. Alex P. Keaton, played by Michael Fox on Family Ties.
That's Michael J. Fox.
Cheers. They had this character before Woody Harrelson's character came. It was Coach, or Ernie Penfuso, played by Nicholas Colinsanto. Night Court, Harry Anderson played Judge Harold T. Stone. We called him Harry. Webster Long. Emmanuel Lewis played Old Webster on the same name show, Webster. Bosco Baracus. Old Bosco Baracus. Anyone guess who that is? Sometimes they called him B.A. or Bad Attitude. You betcha it was Mr. T. Mr. T's real name, though, is Lawrence Turod. Show was the A-Team. The Cosby Show. Now, we had a lot of great characters on this show, but I always liked Denise Huxtable. Later, she got married and her last name was Kendall. Lisa Bonet played that part. Miami Vice. Oh, we have two characters on this, too. Sonny Crockett and Rico Tubbs. Crockett and Tubbs. Tubbs and Crockett? I can't remember. Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas played those guys. Married with Children. Al Bundy. Al was played by Ed O'Neill. Murphy Brown. This is another show full of quirky, funny characters. This is the first rendition of Murphy Brown. I didn't much care for the second time around. Robert Pastorelli played Eldon Bernanke. Kevin Arnold on The Wonder Years was played by Fred Savage. That show had the best music of any TV show, I think, in the history of TV shows. Full House. Here we have two again, but it's the same character. Michelle Tanner, the little girl, is played by the twins, Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen. Coach, Jerry Van Dyke played Luther Van Dam. He was the assistant coach to Craig T. Nelson's Hayden Fox. Doogie Howser, M.D. Dr. Douglas Doogie Howser, played by Neil Patrick Harris. Sarah Gilbert played Darlene Connor on Roseanne. Cosmo Kramer on Seinfeld. Kramer is played by Michael Richards. Now we're into the 1990s. There's a show called Evening Shade. Herman Stiles, played by Michael Jeter. If anyone ever came close to the Don Knotts character, it's Herman Stiles. Northern Exposure. John Corbett played Chris Stevens, the disc jockey up there in that weird little town in Alaska. Home Improvement. Tim Allen played Tim Toolman Taylor. Law and Order, which went for years and years and had many, many different characters, but Jerry Orbach played Lenny Briscoe. ER, there again, bunch of characters that rotated in and out, but Anthony Edwards played Dr. Mark Green. Touched by an Angel. The angel I liked was Monica, played by Roman Downey. Third Rock from the Sun. Dick Solomon was played by John Lithgow. Everybody Loves Raymond, the guy that always felt sorry for himself. Ray's big brother, Robert Barone, played by Brad Garrett. Becker, now this is really the only thing I ever liked Ted Danson in. He played John Becker, and he played it very well. The King of Queens, Jerry Stiller played Arthur Spooner. That's the King of Queens' wife's father, or the father-in-law, I don't know. He lived with those kids. Ed, Tom Cavanaugh played Ed Stevens. If you don't remember the show, some lawyer that owned a bowling alley and his law office was in the bowling alley. Lost. We're in the 2000s now. George Garcia played Hurley, or Hugo Reyes. How I Met Your Mother, the guy that kept looking for love. Josh Radnor played Ted Mosby. Friday Night Lights. Old Coach Eric Taylor was played by Kyle Chandler. The Big Bang Theory. Old Leonard Hofstadter, played by Johnny Galecki. Parks and Rec. Andy Dwyer, played by Chris Pratt. Craig T. Nelson, even though I mentioned him before, he wasn't my main person on Coach, but he is the main person on Parenthood. He played Zeke, or Ezekiel Braverman. He was the dad. The Middle, remember Brick? His full given name was Brick Ishmael Heck. Atticus Shaffer played Brick. And in the 2010s, Commissioner Frank Reagan of Blue Bloods, played by Tom Selleck. I think Selleck was the only guy I had in there twice as far as the actor goes. That's 73 of them. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sure you had others that you really liked that weren't on my radar, or at least weren't on my list. And that's okay. We all have different tastes. Music, TV, movies, color of hair, color of eyes, tall, short, skinny, or fat. We all have different tastes in things we like. I think that's the way God made us. Thank goodness. Always be kind. You never know when someone needs a kind word and a helping hand. I'll be back next Wednesday. Go watch some TV. Peace out.